Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by our wonderful guest, John Leguizamo, to talk all about his series, The Power. And in the way that you've approached this role and this character, it's a show that has all these sci-fi elements with the specific power that all these women start to inherit and absorb into their bodies. But at the end of the day, when we look at your character, Rob, there's such a granular, grounded element of it's a dad just trying to kind of make his marriage work and make things work at home and to be successful in his job, but to do it in a way that feels morally right to him. And so I was interested in how that really helped you in terms of developing the character and grounding it and finding a lot of the really intimate aspects of who he is throughout the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting that you spotted that because, yeah, I mean, I feel like my job as an actor was to be grounded, to be the most grounded, normal, regular guy in the madness that is going around me. How do I keep my wits about me and then lose it, of course, obviously, because the whole world is an apocalyptic situation. The girls are getting this power and the world doesn't know how to deal with it. Men don't know how to deal with it. And they're starting to corral them. And my daughter has the power and she's got a lot of power. And are they going to, ostracize her? Are they going to cage her up? I mean, I'm dealing with a lot of issues like you do as a dad, as a dad, you do got to deal with a lot of stuff and you got to keep your cool. You got to be the life coach, but but you're a regular dude. So you can't really keep it all under, you can't really all contain it all. It all has to, it explodes now and then.
But as you said, when everything kind of starts growing in terms of the landscape of the entire world and it not just being something in his family, at the beginning, it feels like, again, he's very grounded through his experience of it because he understands that this is happening across the country, across the world, to thousands to millions of women. But it feels like he really understands the fact that every single person that's happening to is someone's wife, someone's daughter, someone's family member, because he has that experience of kind of watching his own daughter try to navigate through it. And so for you, was that kind of a central part in the way that he responds to the fact that this becomes a worldwide phenomenon?
Yeah, I mean, I think my character Rob is very empathic anyway. He's a very sympathetic kind of dude because he's a doctor and on a scientific front, he's doing a lot of experiments. But yeah, you're right because it's at home. It's happening at home, and to his eldest, and he's the dad of 3 kids, and obviously when you become a parent, every child becomes your child. I mean, that's how I feel anyway. I feel like now since I have kids, every child that I see suffering, all of a sudden, I can't watch anything with kids suffering because you start weeping, and it just breaks your heart. So yeah, I think, and then he has a problem at home. Now you're really sympathetic to all the girls in the world.
And from the very first moment that he starts to see this taking place in his daughter, even before he kind of fully knows or understands what it is, he, like you said, he's a very compassionate person, and that's the way that he responds to his daughter. He doesn't come at it from a place of fear. He comes from a place of,
right.
Tell me what this is like, and curiosity, and let me make the space for you. And did you always have a definitive idea for how he was going to respond in those first few scenes, or did you have different directions that you considered for him?
Yeah, I was trying to find a place in myself where I could be shocked by it, but not show it. You know what I mean? I think I had to be the grounded dad, while the world's collapsing. So, I mean, I was trying to also be shocked inside that my daughter has this nuclear power in her hands from her skein, but I couldn't show it because I have to be the best dad that I can, and I relate to that in my real life because that's what happens. It's like everything's falling apart, everything is collapsing around your house, and you have to act like it's not bothering you, like you're okay. Meanwhile, you're inside, you're in serious turmoil.
With that idea of kind of the internal turmoil, I love the scene where he's standing there with Margot, with his wife played by Toni Collette, and their daughter, and they're kind of saying, well, show us. And he's standing there very trepidatiously though with the fire extinguisher. So it's like, we've created the space, but also I'm aware of fire safety.
I'm terrified.
Was a scene like that really helpful for what you were describing just there?
Yeah. I mean, she's like going to test her power for the first time. We heard that it could be like a nuclear blast or just static shock, but we don't know what's going to come out of her hands. And so, yeah, I'm like with a fire extinguisher, soaking up the whole entire place because I'm terrified.
And with his daughter Joss, even just from the fact that he's the parent who's physically more present because of how much his wife's job takes her out of the home a lot more.
Right.
There's kind of this shared language that he has with his daughter Joss. And some of that is the fact that they speak Spanish, but Margot doesn't speak Spanish. So there's a literal language. But even just kind of when they're in the car and he's singing along to A Tribe Called Quest, and she's embarrassed, but she kind of also like sees that that's something exciting to him, and
Yeah.
and can kind of like break out of being a teenager a little bit. For you, what was some of the vital shared language that you wanted the two of them to have?
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely the hip hop angle, because that's what I was doing on the set all the time, was playing hip hop and dancing with the three kids that were my kids, and we were teaching each other. We were doing the floss, we were doing, all the moves, the Dougie. We were doing all the moves. So we did that on our spare time, and the writers saw that and put it into the piece. So it was a great bonding moment because we were doing that naturally. So that felt really special. And then Ali, he's such a great actress, and she plays that sort of annoyed with the dad, but kind of likes it a little bit because it's a thing they've shared all their lives. So she played that so beautifully. And yeah, the Spanish too. She and I would rehearse our Spanish and work on it. So I did have a real bond with these kids. I studied with Lee Strasberg, and for a little bit of time because I'm not that old, but but you got to really be method, and I spent as much time with those kids so that I could feel like they were my kids. I'd spend as much. We would go to dinners together. All my free time between takes or between scene setups, we'd be together, and they were cool with it too. And we created that bond, and we really felt close to each other. I mean, I really cared for them. And that's the only way, because you can't fake that on film. You can't. I mean, I can't.
No, absolutely. And, you're bringing up studying at Lee Strasberg. What were some of the other aspects and elements that came into play in terms of, from that study, how you approached this role and this series in particular?
I'm so glad you asked me that. It's just so exciting to me because I'm very proud of my acting classes and all the people I studied with. I studied, Meisner technique and Stella Adler with intentions, Uta Hagen, previous circumstances. So I'm an acting nerd. And the method obviously helped me, especially when I do my one-man shows. I'm on stage by myself. I'm not by myself because of the incredible imagination and environment that you learn how to create sensorially from the method. I know I'm geeking out on on acting technique, but yeah, I used a lot of the method here. In terms of the drunk, when I was really drunk, that was all like method. I got drunk the night before, not the night that I did the scene, because I've learned early on in my career that you get really drunk, then you can't remember your lines. I had a lot of lines, and then you get really tired. You have no energy. So I learned it's better to act it than not. So yeah, I sensorially created the drunkenness and the exhaustion, and yeah, I use it for everything.
I love that you studied all those different techniques, though. And do you find that depending on the project you do, depends on which tools you're pulling from which particular technique and which particular space?
Absolutely. Different writing styles of writing demand different techniques. You can always mix and match. I mean, it's really whatever works at that moment. Sometimes you don't need anything because it's just you're so connected and you're so there. And then sometimes nothing is working, and you're like, you're panicking and freaking out. And you go, oh, I'll use panicking and freaking out. That's what this scene's going to be. That's what it's calling for. And that I kind of learned from the method was like, whatever you're feeling at that moment is the truth of that scene. There isn't another truth, which is, I guess, the mistake a lot of actors make, thinking that what they're feeling isn't right for the character.
Mm-hmm. I love those details. And, going back to the scene that you were just bringing up before, the drunken scene for him as a character, seems like that are always so great because it tells you a lot of the truth of how they're really feeling in a way that they maybe aren't expressing themselves in other moments. And so for you, what was a lot of the truthfulness that you wanted to bring to the surface in a scene like that, where he's just so obliterated drunk that he's jumping into the water and swimming for a sense of freedom that he doesn't feel like he has?
Well, I got to say, I got to pay tribute to the great writing and directing, which was amazing because, here's this production, which is written by women, produced by women, directed by women. It was incredible. and I felt very protected and very nurtured, and I felt heard. Um, and they wrote this incredible scene. I mean, the scenes have such emotional intelligence. I've never really had scripts like this where they're like, were they listening in my house? Did they have speakers or a camera? Because it feels so real. So in this scene where I had to be drunk, and my wife and I, Tony, played by Toni Collette, are not getting along from all the stress of her. And she's an ambitious woman, mayor of Seattle, wanting to move up. Her daughter's having all these issues. The world, there's so much turmoil, and she and I are not connecting. We're not talking. We're not sharing, as it happens in real relationships. And so we go to this party that I don't want to go to, a business party, and I get too drunk because I just feel disconnected, and nobody wants to talk to me because I'm not in politics. I'm a doctor, and I get too drunk, and we get home, and the shit goes crazy. The shit hits the fan. Pardon the vulgarity, and this is, I let all the steam out. I let it all out, but then we were able to get to the truth, which is that we really love each other, and we really love the kids, and we want to do the right thing, and we've been trying to do the right thing coming from different purposes, but we weren't connecting, and we realized we love each other. And then I jump into the bay, the Vancouver Bay, 40-degree water. And I'm like, oh God, at 4 a.m. in the morning, the things you do for acting, you're like, this is the glamour. Where's the glamour?
But also the way that you're describing their marriage as well, even though we start to get to see moments of turmoil between the two of them, and kind of a disintegration of communication, they're two people where we get to see the communication that is there and does exist. And we get to see moments of how they try to handle conflict, and that they're always trying to find their way back to each other, and they're always trying to find that communication with one another. Was that something that really struck you in the writing of the relationship and helped you to form it with Tony?
Yeah, I thought that was the beauty of the writing and working with Toni Collette, who's so present. She's incredibly present. So any inflection, any little glance, whatever you're giving, she's picking up, and that's the acting that I love. Like I first experienced that was with Pacino in Carlito's Way when I was a young man, and I was improvising all this madness because Brian De Palma gave me carte blanche because he loved the craziness that I was saying. But Pacino was there, listening to every inflection, every nuance, and responding to it, and I was like, that's beautiful acting, is like you're right there responding to what's right there, not what you imagined, not what you expected, not what you thought, but what's right there and what's hitting you. And working with Toni Collette in those scenes, that's what we were feeling with each other, is like feeling each other out, really caring for each other, because she and I also did a little bit of method. We spent a lot of time together, in breaks, to create that marriage, because you can't fake that either. You got to feel comfortable with somebody, and when you look in their eyes, you got to really care, and part of that is hanging out. Hopefully, sometimes you don't get along with the other person, and then it's a tough gig. Hopefully it's a bad marriage so that you can use it.
But that idea of the presence that you have to have in terms of building scenes like that, and especially building a relationship as richly written as this one is, the two of you didn't really get a chance to rehearse before and kind of like sit down with your characters. And so was that kind of the way that the two of you found a lot of the idiosyncrasies? Because even just like the body language of the way that he kind of fixes a wound on her ankle and puts a Band-Aid on is very intimate. And so you really capture that through a lot of their body language and the way that they kind of move together in scenes.
I mean, it's incredible how much you pick up. I mean, you got obviously a sharp eye. Yeah, I mean, I was trying to in the few scenes that we had before our marriage starts falling apart, was to show the tenderness and care that because as a married couple, you're in a relationship that where you care about somebody, the way you touch each other, it says a lot. Even if you're fixing something or brushing hair, there's messaging the way that you touch each other that tells people, the audience, that you love each other, that there's love, that there's a sensorial connection, and they're comfortable with each other to touch each other.
And we start to learn that a lot of his frustrations are just feeling like he always is showing up for her, but the space isn't being created for him. The fact that she doesn't ask him how his day is, but he asks her how her day was whenever they sit down to dinner, whenever they're in the home together. And so kind of knowing that that was the direction that the marriage was going in and that those were his frustrations, how did you set about making sure that, as a character, Rob was always creating that space and kind of setting it up for her so that we really feel it as an audience with when he starts to bring up the fact that he doesn't feel like that's being reciprocated?
The brilliant thing is that the writers did was they kind of flipped it a little bit, in terms of that scene is usually the woman saying to the man, you don't listen to me, you don't ask me about my day. And they flipped it because I'm a little bit of a Mr. Mom in this relationship, which I love playing because it resembles a little bit of my life for certain times. Because, men are finally moving into a place where they take more responsibility in the home in raising the kids, and it creates this new connection, this like a tighter relationship between kids and parents and men and their children. And so here I am in these scenes with Toni Collette, and we're trying to plant all the love, so that there's an arc to our relationship. So it's not already broken when you start. It's a relationship that's full of love and tenderness that then, because of her ambition, and because this is the beauty of the show, that women are writing about women, they can have ambition and still be moms, but it can still cause a lot of problems at home. Mm-hmm. Not because I'm a machista or part of the patriarchy. I think Rob was built in a way that he's not part of the patriarchy, that there are men who are sympathetic to women's progress and women's ambition and being the alpha in the relationship, or if there's such a thing. But I love the way they created Rob as a new male, as a new masculinity, the sensitive masculinity, the nurturing male, the caring male, and because I see that everywhere. I see a lot of men adopting that new masculinity and rejecting the alpha, the old school, you got to be the top dog, dog eat dog. I'm the boss. Everybody else is not the boss. I run things. This is my, the old Jackie Gleason, knock you to the moon, Alice. Get at, hey, Ralphie Book, that kind of stuff.
No, I agree with everything that you're saying about him. And even to the point of the fact that when their marriage starts to disintegrate, it doesn't feel like it's because he's threatened by her running for Senate and running for a higher position and any of that. It feels like it's because, she didn't consult the family and she didn't talk to him. And so the communication that was there just isn't existing between them.
Oh my God, it's so brilliant. That little nuance is so brilliant because it's not that he is uncomfortable with her power and her ambition. He's not. He loves it. The problem is that she didn't consult with him. She didn't include him in her decisions. And anybody would be upset in a relationship. It's like a fair gripe. It's fair beef. You know what I mean? Because it's not sort of toxic masculinity. It's like, we're in a relationship together. We're partners. We need to talk about everything before you make a decision. That's it's a fair gripe. I felt.
No, absolutely. And, in the meantime as well, he's raising 3 kids and his son is kind of going down a path of being taken into a certain vocabulary on the internet, which in the show is a site called Urban Docs that's talking about the very stereotypical sense of masculinity and kind of needing to reclaim that. And it's interesting because some of the moments that we kind of get the sense of Rob being there and kind of parenting his son and kind of trying to talk to him about that don't necessarily happen on screen. But for you, kind of what were the important dynamics that you wanted him to have with his son, especially as his son starts going down this trajectory?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting that the trajectory that the boys going and then what the writers were tapping into and the producers was this incel, white, usually white males. But I mean, it happens to a lot of young males who are feeling disconnected and who feel alone and feel that their masculinity is not valid, or it is a thing. It is a thing, especially in America, and to tap into that. So with my son in the show, who's a great, the kid's a brilliant actor. I was trying to to be to listen instead of giving advice, like the typical, like the mistakes when I go to therapy and my therapist tells me, stop giving advice, listen to your kids, ask them questions. So you borrow from life when you're acting, and that's what I tried to do those things, is be more present and listening than always giving the answers, trying to find solutions, which is, kind of a male go-to that you can't help. It's kind of like programmed, but you have to like break that.
And with the trajectory in terms of his professional life, where he has a meeting with someone and he basically learns like there's an intention to create a medication that would completely eradicate this in women.
Wow.
And kind of remove this organ, the skein that exists in them. It feels like there's no kind of thought process before he decides to leak that information. The first things he does is pull an old friend from school and makes that very distinct choice of, I'm going to leak this information because it's too important and it's bigger than me. And then it feels like he kind of assesses that choice a little bit more afterwards, not to a point where he regrets it, but just kind of in understanding the ramifications of it. And so how did you want to create that retroactive consideration?
Yeah, I mean, that's wild, because he becomes a whistleblower, and it's a dangerous move in life to be a whistleblower, because you can wreck your career, everything you worked for, and the consequences are huge. You usually can't get a job. You usually, I mean, and then it's dangerous too. I mean, depending on the career path or a political thing, and you become a whistleblower, there's a lot of dangers to that. There's a lot of maniacs out there who want to take you out. And so I think they were tapping into that. And I was trying to figure out Rob's moral righteousness. He's got an incredible moral compass, and he wants to do the right thing, and he wants to do it and risking everything. I think his sense of doing the right thing is bigger than his family. It's bigger than himself. And it taps into how some people do that, how some people risk everything to do the right thing because they can't live with themselves. And then Rob starts to think about, oh, now I might have made a huge mistake and brought violence towards my family and disrupted my marriage because I didn't consult my wife. The very thing that I'm asking her to consult, I'm not consulting. So it's beautiful how they created all these little human frailties and faults, character flaws.
Yeah. I also appreciate the fact that they create some levity to the character as well. Even just the fact that when he's on the phone with Declan, he's like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if I had a special code name, like a color and an animal? And, or the scene on their anniversary where he kind of gives Margot something to smash. And then he's like, oh, go get the IKEA plates. Like, let's both do this because I want to play as well. And so was it important to you as well to make sure that you had those moments of kind of levity and lightness in the character as much as the rest of the storyline?
Yeah, I love the humor that they brought into, especially when I was drunk and I'm screaming and the neighbors are flipping out and the kids come out to see us and I'm just losing it, like a top, I'm going at 100 miles per hour. I love the humor everywhere. And then I jump into the bay, and I'm swimming away. I love all the humor because it exists in life. I mean, no matter what, how dark a moment it is, that you got to find the humor. I feel like that's the best writing, the best directing, the best acting is undercut things and find counterpoints. So like if you're doing something very hilarious and funny, it's better if you find real emotion, and real pain. That just makes it even funnier, I think, and just more relatable. But the same conversely happens in drama, that you got to find that Brando in Streetcar Named Desire, those little moments of humor and glint in your eye and wordplay that so sort of goes against the drama and the pain.
Definitely. And in terms of kind of the emotional truthfulness, what were the important emotional aspects for you in the moment where Rob first discovers that his wife now has the power? And then especially the fact that his daughter was the one that gave it to her, because it's something where it's, my wife hasn't been truthful. I don't know how long I haven't known. And then also my daughter was part of this. And what does that mean for the family dynamic as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big scene for me because it was, I think, a big betrayal for my character, Rob, on my wife's part. But then knowing that my daughter also sort of was either didn't feel like that. I didn't count. It's sort of like Rob, the dad, doesn't matter. I felt discounted. It was a big shocking moment for me, and I had to play that. I had to give it the right weight, so you could clock these moments without them being big, histrionic moments, but they had to be registered for the audience to see Rob's arc, where he's going to go in episodes 8 and 9, and where that's going. Yeah.
Yeah. And when he, speaking of the later episodes as well, when he takes the family camping and sits down and has the conversation with Margot, where he tells her, I'll stay with you through the political campaign, but after that, I'm done. I want a divorce. What was the dynamic between you and Tony in filming a scene like that? That's, again, it kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier. Like, you still feel the love that he has for this woman in this moment, and you also feel the hurt and the pain that he's been experiencing as well.
Yeah, that scene was very important for Tony and me, Tony Collette and myself, to get it right. And by getting it right, I meant that you see their whole life is at a crossroads. Their marriage, their future, their kids' future, the future of the planet. I mean, it's all there weighing on us. And the audience, we wanted the audience to know that we did love each other, and we still love each other. We just can't be together. The marriage is not working anymore, and how painful that is for anybody in a real relationship, when you love somebody and you can't, it just doesn't work, and it's you're worse together than you are, than you were before. Now you're kind of toxic with each other a little bit, and that's not good for the kids. It's not good for each other. It's not good for anybody. And to be able to understand that, we had to experience a lot of pain. You had to go to those places that really hurt. And Tony went there, and I tried to go there, and I feel like we really achieved it. It was, we had to hug each other a lot after these scenes. And you could tell the crew was also, it was everybody was feeling it, and we were all very quiet, and yeah. And then the director hugged us, Logan, and it felt good to get a little sort of comfort.
Yeah. And it's an interesting space to watch the scenes that follow that, where he's still showing up for her, but there's that distance, and especially in spaces where they can't allow anybody else to know that that's what's going on in their marriage, such as when they're filming a political piece in their kitchen, and you can see kind of how everything that's going on makes him a little bit flustered in trying to deliver. And so how did you find what that space was going to be, of still showing up for her, but having a certain kind of quiet undercurrent of distance at the same time?
Well, I'm on my second marriage, so I experienced a lot of that in my first marriage, where you're, you got to keep up appearances for your friends and for family, and even though you both know that it's over, and you're just holding on. And Rob obviously has my character has the responsibility for his kids too. So he's got that extra burden that you want to be those parents that are fighting and destroying everything, and destroying the kids' image of the parents, and you got to keep it together, even though it hurts being together now more than ever. So we at that point, me and Tony stopped hanging out, because I am very method about it, and she is too in her way. And so we stopped hanging out. We stopped spending time together. I stopped goofing. I was like always very alone in my trailer, or alone as possible on set, and trying to sit with that pain, so that when they say action, it's right there. And she saw that I was not comfortable being near her. I was not comfortable wanting to touch her. We played all those little nuances as best we could.
Yeah. And when he has the moment where, in support of her campaign, he's doing an interview, and there's even just that decisive moment where he starts to give the reporter his email address to send the article once it's done, and then has that moment of, actually, I'll give you my personal email address. That's kind of opening a door. And so what was the shift for the character for you in terms of that being a very decisive choice that he's making in that moment, even though it's a very small one?
That's a tough moment, because I felt like, oh man, I'm shifting into dog mode. You know what I mean? He's like Rob's being a dude. He's like making sure that he is not going to be alone. You know what I mean? Even though he tried the best he could of his marriage, but now he's going to start taking care of Rob. So yeah, that was a tough moment for me, because to be that kind of character is you see that his weaknesses. Now you see this guy is actually a little weaker. He's not the great dude you thought. So I had to reveal that, and yeah, so he let his animal take over, and not the best side of Rob.
And with all the different layers that you had to build into the character and the kind of like different emotional directions that you had to take him, what were the details and aspects that building into this role that challenged you the most in retrospect?
I did the challenging moments were the big fights. Those were the biggest challenging. How do we keep those grounded? How do we keep those real? How do we make sure that the audience is scoring our relationship correctly, that we're taking them through every little step that dissolves a marriage, like a beautiful marriage, not a toxic Virginia Woolf marriage, but something that's a really caring marriage that could have worked forever and now isn't. So I want to make sure that they saw those little moments where it's starting to get toxic, where it's starting to not work, where they're not going to patch it up, where they're going to that path of no return. And we want to make sure that they saw that from the love to the trying to work it out together, to the little heartbreaks, to the point where, okay, now we've reached a point where we can't be together. It's just not good anymore.
Yeah, I really, really loved watching your performance throughout the series. And so
thank you.
Such a pleasure to hear all these details that went into it. Thank you so much, John.
Oh, thank you. I mean, you the way you described it and watched it is so detailed that it made it easy to talk about. Thank you. Thank you for really studying it.
I appreciate that.